Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Let's get started with our hosts, Linda McKissick and Dana Gentry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. I'm Linda McKissick.
And I'm Dana Gentry.
Hey, Dana, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I am excited because today we're going to talk about why people might want to do a podcast, or if you're thinking about a podcast, what we've learned from doing a podcast, everything podcast.
Yep, I love it. I know we said, I don't know if we're the most qualified people to say this one, but
That's so true. We are not your expert advice on podcasts, but we are your advice on, man, if those two can do it, I know I can do it.
That's very true.
So let's kind of start out and talk a little bit about kind of why we even originally had this kind of plan or idea to do the podcast, or why did we want to do it?
You want to start first?
Sure, yeah. Matter of fact, because I think I was the one that came to you with the idea.
You did. Yep, I was just getting ready to say that.
And I'm trying to remember back. I think, number one, you and I love talking to each other, and so we never get enough time to do that. So it was a great way for us to have conversations about stuff we were interested in, and then other people could just listen in. But I think anytime you look at doing a podcast, or even some of the things that we've learned some of our top agents are doing on social media, to me, it's one, it has to be a topic that you're passionate about and that you love talking about and you want to learn about. Because to be honest with you, I selfishly teach and I selfishly do this podcast around topics that I want to learn more about or I'm interested in. And so it's a way to kind of double up on our time, right? I get to have the conversation, ask the questions, and at the same time put the information out there for other people who might be interested. So if there's a topic or something that you're super interested in, I think the first thing you have to do, Dana, is think about who your audience is. And I think that's the hard part for people. Remember, you and I have talked about niche and niche and whatever way we want to say it in the South. But I think that's always what I've learned from lots of people who are good at this stuff, say that that's the number one thing you have to do. And I think that's the hardest thing for people to do. Because I know when I started, I thought every entrepreneur should hear us. And then I thought, who do I really love helping every day? And it's realtors.
Yeah, I just had this conversation right before we started recording the podcast. I was doing my Friday morning Zoom with all of the leadership teams in my market centers. Now we all come together, we all do a call on Friday mornings and get everybody on the same page. And today we were talking about telling our story outside, like on our social media and all of those things. And it was interesting because I told them, I said, we have to know who our audience is. And we have a unique audience because as a market center, our audience is primarily realtors, because we want them to see what we're doing at our office and how our agent's business is growing and all the fun that we have and all those things. And then someone else said, but also as the number one real estate company in town, wouldn't we want clients to be our audience too? And so we started brainstorming around that. So now we're going to start posting more open houses and community activities to where our audience is not only other realtors, but also our clients too. And so we spent the entire hour, we took up our whole call this morning just talking about that and figuring out who do we want our audience to be, and then how can we actually touch them and give them value, which is a big reason why, in my opinion, we do the podcast, is to give value and to be able to just share and help, and it helps us think of other things and all of those things.
Yeah. And, you never know what relationships you're going to get. To me, I'm all about who do I not know out there that I need to know, and who could benefit from knowing us, and, no expectations on anything of where that might go. But I just know that my life has gotten richer by the more people that I've come across that I could build a relationship with. And people won't give you the time of day for a relationship until you're valid to them. And I would never want to take someone's most precious asset, which is their time, without truly adding value to them. And again, getting clear about who you could help for the next 25 years and never get tired of it. And, I would say on that, you would do something for your audience that would add value to them. And maybe even in your audience, local businesses, community stuff, that kind of stuff. And then something else for your realtors that would benefit them and add value to them. Because
Yep.
I've just found that it was really hard for me in the very beginning when I would go to, like I did an exercise with Michael Hyatt, which is phenomenally and brilliant early on. And, everybody says narrow your niche down. And it was just so difficult because I felt like I was going to leave somebody out. But the
Yeah.
more I did that and the more you and I do that, the better everything gets. And so doesn't mean later on you couldn't expand your market, but I think getting clear about who you want to be a hero to and what would give them value is a better place to start, because then you're not all over the place. You're very narrow in your focus, and it's real easy to figure out what would be of value to these people and how can I add value. And then later, if I want to expand that into other, small business owners or entrepreneurs, I'm very clear. I don't want to help CEOs and, people like that of companies. I want to help entrepreneurs for sure.
Yep.
And then if I narrow that down even farther, I want to help realtors think bigger and have bigger lives and have something when they finish this career, and this career to be give them more freedom of their time, money, and relationships right now. And so I'm very clear on that, and I get very passionate about that, and I can talk about that all day long. But if you start getting into things where you're trying to serve everybody, then you lose a little. To me, I think you lose a little bit of authenticity and value.
Yep. You said I wrote down three words right before we started, as of in my mind why to do a podcast, and I wrote down relationships, value, and validity. And that was exactly what you just said. And honestly, you make it well. For us, when we go out and make relationships and talk to agents, no matter what company they're with, sometimes it's when you don't know somebody, if it were somebody inside of Keller Williams and they said, hey, do you want to do a call with Linda McKissick? They would be like, yes, I can't wait. What time? I'll clear my schedule. But when you don't know somebody and you don't know the validity behind them, then you have no idea. And so I think a way to be able to get to know people that you want to get to know, if you can't just directly meet them and have a communication with them, have a direct communication with them, is to do it through social media and through a podcast and be able to let them learn more about you, and you can give them value and you can learn things from them that way. And then it's kind of like an indirect way of communication or building relationships. But we've built some great relationships through the podcast with either guests we've had on or listeners who've reached out and all of those things. And even yesterday, Adam was doing a call with somebody, and she said, I listened to Linda and Dana's podcast religiously. I never miss an episode. And actually, that was how she put the connection with something that she's doing with Adam. And Adam said, we have no clue the reach that sometimes podcasts go.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think what it is it's a long game. It's not a short game. So you don't want to
Definitely.
start something like this, and and it's a little hard because remember, you and I have had this conversation
Yeah.
of really knowing if excuse me, is anybody listening? Hey, anybody out there? But they are, and the more you do it, the more reach it gets.
Yeah.
Like I think what is our total downloads right now? 100, almost 160,000.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, who are these people, right?
I know. I know. We'll know that we've made it when you go to Hawaii and somebody says,
Oh my
"Oh,
gosh, I listened to y'all's podcast. Yes, that's so
wasn't that where it
true.
was? Hawaii, I think, or somewhere."
Yeah, and for those of you that haven't heard the story, I had a business coach one time tell me that what I really needed to do in my real estate business was build a brand so recognizable that when I went to the grocery store and stood in the produce section, nobody asked me about the produce. They asked me about real estate. So many years later, after this, I get this advice. I've worked diligently to market my name and my brand and to get people to think of me when they think of real estate, at least be in the top three. And I go to Hawaii, and the lady is checking us in for the spa, and she puts down her pen when I tell her my name, and she goes, McKissick Real Estate. So that's our new goal, Dana.
Yes.
We go to Hawaii, we go to the spa, and they go, oh, I listened to y'all's podcast. I love
Yep.
it.
Yeah, that's it. But it is true. It is the long game, and you have to be consistent. And I mean, I know both of us, there's been times where it's hard. We're like, crap, we don't have an episode, or, whatever that looks like. But truly committing to be consistent with it is huge, because that's how you keep growing.
And if you're going to co-host with somebody, find somebody who brings out the best in you. Like what I love about you and I doing this, Dana, is number one, we both are very learning based. We love to learn. We love to grow. But there's so much value that you bring on just stuff that I don't even have, right? And we can come together in this conversation, and we both make each other think. And while you're talking, I'm thinking, and I think off of your thoughts. And so I think that's another very important thing, because I have tried a podcast before by myself and I hated it. Yeah. Or at least recordings and things like that, not necessarily a podcast. Maybe I did. I don't remember. Maybe it was just recordings, video recordings. But I didn't like that, and it wasn't fun. And if this isn't fun, don't do it. You wouldn't want to do it. And then I would say the other thing is don't worry about all the equipment. You and I have bought more equipment that we don't use. Actually, I'm kind of excited today because we're trying out a new system called Riverside, right?
Yep.
And Kate had us get out our big old microphone that we've, like, here's mine. I haven't had it any since we started. I just bought it. And then I've got this big plug thing with all these, like the camera plugged in. And we had all this stuff and we've never used it because we'd unwrap it out of the package and lose a piece, or not really sure how it works, or so I think don't
get it put together.
Yeah. Oh, we can even put the microphone together in the beginning. So I just bought a new one that was already put together. That's how I solved my problem. But don't feel like you have to go out and buy all the best equipment, because I think your iPhones are amazing. Your Mac can do so much. Laptops can do so much. Don't feel like you got to go out and buy, super duper equipment. Now I am going to get a new podcast room and when they redo my house on the lake, but, and I'm super pumped about that, but I'm only doing that because we got to remodel the house anyway, because it got flooded. And I'm just super excited. I'm going to have a little room that's not upstairs. It's not downstairs. It's right off my office, and I can just close the door and go in there and do the podcast. So I think, awesome. You don't have to do it on the front end, though. I think on the front end, just, number one, what are the topics you're passionate about, that you love learning about yourself, that you think your audience, who's your avatar, who's the people you want to be a hero to?
Yep. If
it's other realtors, what do they want to hear? If it's homeowners, what would be so cool and fun to bring to homeowners? And it doesn't even have to, I don't think it has to be another open house and all that crap that people are probably sick of. Sure, you can have that in some place, but if I was having a conversation with a homeowner, I would think, what is in their head? What is the conversation that they're having in their head that I can step into and bring value around? Like, how to have more value in your home, how to, even just anything that is around the home. If you gave me tips on different things about my home, I would love that, because I love my home. Everybody loves their home, right? Yep. I don't think it has to be specifically just real estate sales related. I think you throw those in every so often, but you talk about everything. And for me, I'd probably pick the local business owner that I know they own a home also, and I would try to help them in their business because I love business. But who are you, and what value do you think you could bring? Real interesting. We had on our Profit Share podcast the other day, Dana, a girl that's in our Profit Share Mastery course right now. And I brought her on the Profit Share podcast because she came from the, like retirement home world. And so she said on our Profit Share call, she said, I see so many horrible things because people aren't prepared financially for their parents to get older, or for themselves to get older. And so what's interesting is when she's sitting on the podcast, I'm like, Mary, I can think of a million things that you could do with your real estate business. Why don't you go after the audience that is having to think about in the next few years a good retirement home? What do they need to be thinking about? Because she's had all these 20 plus years in that industry. Yeah. And I'm like, you don't throw that industry out the door. You bring that knowledge into this industry, and that launches who your audience is in the very beginning. So I just, I think there's so many things, and she has so much knowledge around it that she could advise and help people. And I would start to offer that as a value without ever expecting anything from anybody. Let me be your guide. Let me help you understand this world. Maybe I do seminars or training on this world. of if your parents are from this age to this age and you're going to be needing to think about it in the next 5 or 10 years, here's what we need to be thinking about. Here's how you can make that really great for you and your parents. I mean, I think there's so much she could do with that. So I think you, number one, figure out who you want to be a hero to. What is your 10 years in the past knowledge do you have that you could start with that and share that? And you can always move into other topics. You're not stuck with one topic, but it's a launching pad that you already have some momentum in. What would you say about that?
Yep. Well, I was just writing down really, I think the three things we've pretty much said is number one, who's your audience? Who do you want to be a hero to? You got to know that first. Number two, do you need a who? Are you better working with somebody else? Are you better individually? I mean, I could never get on and do this without you, or you probably wouldn't want to do it yourself. We both like to do it with each other. And also, do you need a who to help you get set? You and I also knew that we were never going to be able to figure out how to get from this to make it on iTunes or something like that. So we had to have a great who in Kate to be able to help us. But there are people out there I know that they do their own podcast and they do a great job and they know how to do all that stuff and they want to do it. So I think it's who is your audience, number one. Number two, do you need a who? And then number three, what are you passionate about? How can you bring value? And then using your past knowledge and successes to be able to consistently carry out a message. And really, those are like the three. Yeah. And then, like you said, don't worry about the equipment and all that. Just get the basics of those three things, and then you can go and be successful with it.
Yeah. And I would also say, add to that, what do you want your end result to be? For you and I, it's more relationships in the real estate world. That would be the icing on the cake. If we met more people in the real estate world that we didn't know before we started, man, that's a huge plus for me. And then the rest of it is stuff that we would be doing anyway, and that we're learning and growing from, and we're sharing with other people while we learn and grow from it. But I think as long as we accomplish that every time, or as the long game, you and I are both happy with the time it takes for us to do this.
Yep, absolutely. Plus, we get, like you said, selfishly, man, we've gotten to learn some great things from having guests and just topics that we wouldn't have thought of, and all of those things. Plus, even when we go, Linda, I don't know if you feel this way, but let's say we go to John Maxwell event. When we come back and actually, like, this is my time to reflect. You know how John always says, prepare on the front and reflect on the back end. When we come back and do a podcast about it, it sinks it in even deeper to my mind, because that's the time that I actually used to reflect on all the millions of notes we just took and the things we learned.
Well, yeah. And when we're there, you and I are also looking for who could be our next great guest that people might not know about. You and I have built relationships with guest speakers that we would have not otherwise had. And they're really cool relationships. And, those are people that we weren't necessarily in relationship with. We've created more validity in those people's eyes for us also.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a great way to think of it.
Yeah, so I love it. So you know what? Here's the thing. I think this is where things are going. This is a great vehicle, long game vehicle to do it. You could also do this if you don't want to do it as a podcast. You could do it on YouTube. You could just shoot videos to your own client database. You don't necessarily, and maybe you even start there if you don't necessarily want to do a podcast. And then I wouldn't worry about again the details of all the equipment. I just figure out how to get started, and YouTube is a great place to do that. I'm sure there's a million YouTubes on how to use your Mac and do it. And I think, there's always lots of great people that have that knowledge and expertise that are willing to jump in and even for a really small fee, help you do the little pieces that you don't want to do or that you can't do. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes,
awesome.
Absolutely.
Good. So any final thoughts or anything you want to add before we close out this podcast on why you should or maybe think about doing a podcast for yourself?
No, but I think that we should give credit to Jimmy. This was his idea to do this episode.
You know what? It was. Yeah. So by the way, speaking of that, if you've got ideas and topics you'd like to hear us talk about, reach out to us at info@everything life and real estate. If you've got a challenge, an opportunity, or you know a great guest, or you want to be a guest on our podcast, just reach out to us at info@everything life and real estate, and we are always looking for great ideas. And yes, thank you, Jimmy, for two things. One, being one of our guests on our podcast, and number two, and usually I always say this, the quietest person in the room has the best answers, right? So he sits on the sidelines, listens to us a lot from the living room with his TV on or whatever, and he gets some great ideas for us that we don't even think about or wouldn't think about. I would have never thought about doing one on this.
No. Yeah, it was
So
good.
again, thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate that. And if you know someone that would benefit from these conversations, be sure and pass our podcast along to someone else that you think that would benefit from these conversations. And I wanted to give a shout out to Jean Tanner in Utah, who is sharing our podcast like crazy. We have 18 new listeners just from her office because she loves it, which Jean, by the way, is someone I'd love to have as a guest because she's a realtor who not only was happy just doing a real estate business, but she wanted a bigger life. And so she's done some amazing things that we can share also. But yes, share our podcast. Yeah, we will do that. And so share our podcast with anyone that you think would benefit from our conversations. And if you hadn't done it already, be sure and hit subscribe below. So Dana, have a great time. I know you're about to take a trip. Have a great time, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good. See you then.
Be sure to subscribe for more business strategies and tactics to inspire you to live an abundant real estate life. Don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you the best content. Find this and other valuable information at everythinglifeandrealestate.com.